Up there.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 podcast live stream. I am your host, Stephen Nagishi, and with me once again to discuss the last week's Chicago Bears win over Carolina Panthers, barely squeaking by, and other Bears and NFL news. Once again, it is YouTuber Rishab Skiri from DaWindyCity Productions. Rishab, welcome. Thank you very much once again for doing this.
Of course, no problem. I was actually at the game last week, so plenty to talk about during that game.
Well, I'm very glad that you went to the game, and maybe you could offer us a firsthand experience of what was that game like. That being last Thursday night, with the Bears barely beating the Carolina Panthers 16-13. So I caught the game, on Amazon, and I got to tell you, watching that game, the offense really struggled to move the ball right from the get-go, and certainly a week before, Bagent, the quarterback, really struggled to move the ball. Tyson Bagent should be, I should say the full name, really struggled to move the ball due to probably largely because of his, poor performance in the fourth quarter versus the New Orleans Saints just 4 days beforehand. And, Rishab, somebody who was actually at the game, give me your overall thoughts on the game. Let's start with the offense.
Yeah, it was pretty boring to watch the offense the entire night. It was obviously a fun environment to go there. And, we had a few good drives going. We scored field goals a bunch of times, but it really was not a good offensive performance out of the entire offense. But I would say mostly I felt like the quarterback did hold this offense back because when you were on the field there, I was actually having pretty good seats for this game. So I was actually on the lower level and near the midway point, near the 50-yard line. So, I could see the entire field on both directions. And there was a lot of wide open guys that Tyson Bagent just completely flat out missed. And I never want to put all the blame on a quarterback for any loss or any bad performance. But I really feel like, with average level quarterback play, like the scheming was not as bad as I thought it would be in the last game. And the playmakers also played, pretty decently. Like they got open. Offensive line gave Tyson Bagent a bunch of time. I mean, Braxton Jones had a pretty good game. Darnell Wright on the right side, he had a pretty fantastic game as well. The Panthers don't have a great defensive line without Brian Burns, so it wasn't like they were going up against a really good team. But I was really impressed by the Bears' offensive line, how they handled the Carolina Panthers' D-line in the trenches. But the quarterback play definitely left a lot to be desired, and he definitely left a lot of big plays out there on the football field. So, overall, I was pretty impressed by a lot of the Bears offense, but the quarterback play, even the play calling at times was not great. Like I'm not going to say Luke Getsy called a great game by any means, but I think it was good enough to score more points than what we actually scored. So it was definitely disappointing to only score what we scored, like 15 points, something like that. So
yeah,
it could have been a lot.
16 points. Yeah.
Yeah. 16, yeah.
Well, when has Luke Getsy ever called a great game anyway, right? So
100%,
maybe the I would say probably the New England game last year on a Monday night, but that's the only game that I can possibly think of. So you could tell Tyson Bagent was really timid out there. Perhaps basically, he was feeling the pressure not to commit any turnovers throughout the game. So he was definitely missing, a lot of open receivers, like you were mentioning. And I was really, really worried that, the Bears, were going to blow this game. They gave up a punt return touchdown by a former Bear, Amir Smith Marset. Of all the players, a former Bear player, he's the one who actually did a damage in that ball game. And I'm sure you probably felt pressure and the atmosphere turned to, okay, here we go again, didn't it, after that touchdown?
Yeah, I was actually by the Panthers sidelines. So there was a bunch of Panthers fans there too, and they were cheering. All the Bears fans there, you could just tell there's a look of like, oh shit, here we go again on their faces. Like, oh, we're actually going to blow this game to the Carolina Panthers. And like you mentioned, out of all people, to Emir Smith-Marset, like that's super embarrassing. So, definitely not a good moment for the Bears special teams. But I will say the Bears special teams has been really good for the most, majority
Right.
of the year. We haven't had much kickoff returns ourselves or punt returns ourselves because Velus Jones, we know he has his problems, and on punt returns, like we never actually return punts really. So yeah, it was a moment of weakness with special teams, but those happen every once in a while. It just kind of sucked. It happened against a former Bear that really was bad for us last year.
Yeah, I think of all the problems that the Bears have had this year, special teams certainly is at the least of our concerns. Richard Hightower has certainly done a real good job. Other than giving up a punt return last Thursday, and also Cairo Santos blowing a field goal down in New Orleans and maybe one extra point. Other than that, he hasn't been much of a problem. So, a real good. I'm going to give a pass. On Hightower's unit. If this becomes like a regular thing moving forward, then obviously there's a problem. But that's the least of our concerns. So offensively, Bajent managed to play a mistake-free ball game. Certainly had to tame down his numbers and the completions and pass attempts. Once again, Dante Freeman really came through. This time a former Panther facing his former team that he played for last year and had a very good season. I got to tell you, Foreman has been a wonderful, wonderful addition. Considering the Khalil Herbert is still on the IR. I think he's eligible to come off at any point right now. They have to cut somebody, possibly Velus Jones, to make a spot for Herbert. But Foreman has been a revelation, and he had another good game last Thursday night. There's certainly, I think, debate about how to utilize the three capable running backs, but Foreman certainly has to be at the very top of the guy who gets the most of the carries moving forward, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely with how good he's been the last, month, basically. You can't just take him out of the lineup right now when he's averaging close to like 5.0 yards per carry. I think I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but Foreman has been way too good to take him completely out of the lineup. Now, when Herbert does come back, I still think there's argument to be made that he could be the lead back because even when he was with the Bears here the last 2 years, like he's been having really good performances of himself. So it's kind of a problem that it's a good problem to have where we have too many good running backs in the rotation. But what I think is going to happen is that both Foreman and Herbert are going to be sharing carries. You could call Foreman maybe the lead back right now, but I think Herbert is going to get a lot of carries as well. But that leaves Roshan Johnson kind of on the outside looking in, I feel like, to get actual carries. But the thing where
Yeah,
he does, provide value is like pass blocking, right? Like you guys saw last game, he had some tremendous pass blocking snaps, right? So on
sure.
third down, I still think Roshan Johnson could be that third down back, but it's going to be kind of tough for Luke Getsy to figure out a way to feed all these very talented backs. And like I mentioned, it's a good problem to have because other teams, some of them are struggling to find good running back talent, good running back depth, and we have three really good ones. And we also are getting Kari Blasingame back as well. I believe he fully practiced today. So our fullback should be back as well, which is another big bonus to the back room because he's a phenomenal blocker. He's been helping out on even run blocking as well. So, overall, I'm very happy about the Bears running back rotation, and it should be, pretty good. Whoever is the lead back going forward.
Yeah, it's a nice problem to have for sure. Very, very interesting to see how they, devise the carries. Because certainly there's other players who has to be on the roster or at least be on the field in order to, play. And it's back to maybe at least Johnson might have to be a healthy scratch, just like Dante Freeman was a healthy scratch inexplicably the first 4 games of the regular season. So this is very interesting to see how the Bears will, diversify the ball carries between Foreman and presumably Khalil Herbert once he gets healthy. So, on the defensive side, Montez Sweat had a phenomenal game. Certainly, his first game. Excuse me. It's his second game since he signed a massive contract. Certainly, he signed a contract before the Saints game and made his presence felt. But with a short amount of time. Are you impressed with how much Montez Sweat has fit into the Bears defense and making an impact, even though the talent that he had in Washington certainly is not as comparable as to the ones with the Bears?
Yeah, I'm definitely impressed. I mean, he's been really good the last two games. Last game he had 8 pressures by himself, and like you mentioned, the pass rush on the opposite side of him is nowhere close to what he had in Washington, and the interior defensive line also is nowhere close to what he had in DC. So he doesn't have a sack yet, which I know some people that maybe have not watched the games they might point to and be like, "Oh, he doesn't have a sack yet, so he probably has not been doing much of anything." But if you do watch the games, he is the main person actually getting any level of pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah.
Last game, like I mentioned, he had 8 pressures by himself, which according to Next Gen Stats has not been done by any Bears defender since 2020. Robert Quinn was the last person that had 8 sacks in a game. So you guys can see he's really good against the run. Obviously, the Bears' run defense has been even better. Adding him to the lineup, they already were pretty good defending against the run, but now they're even better. I think according to Pro Football Reference, they're actually number 2 against the run. So it's been a slam dunk, trade so far. It's only been 2 games though, so it's way too early to give any sort of long-term conclusion. But unlike the Chase Claypool trade, this guy is actually performing really, really well immediately after he got traded. And there's not had to be any sort of he has to learn the playbook, give him time. Like he's already immediately impacting the Bears defense, which is how it should be. Most positions in the NFL, most good players, when they come to a new team, you can tell right away that they're good players, and that's the case here with Montez Sweat.
Yeah, I'm very, very impressed, and certainly I think he's very, very close to having his own sack or maybe a 2 with the Bears. I can definitely feel it. Certainly, others benefited from him, getting a lot of attention. Even still, the way he was just shoving around Bryce Young, who's a very diminutive quarterback, around 5'9", 5'10", it certainly was a very, very impressive sight to see. One of the criticism was obviously Ryan Poles gave up a high second-round pick, just like he did a year ago to get Chase Claypool. But unlike Chase Claypool, Montez Sweat is a real deal, certainly. And the money that he got, 4 years, $98 million, with the 72.8 or something guaranteed, is look like a very good deal, considering that this year's draft pass rush is somewhat considered a lean position, even on the edge rushers and 3 technique as well. So certainly getting a Sweat was a stroke of genius, and give Ryan Poles, credit where credit is due. Certainly, his moves have been scrutinized, but this one I think may have at least given a huge boost in the much maligned Bears defense. So overall, now the Bears are 3-7. They've had a couple of days, obviously, off, and I'm sure you probably spent your Sundays watching other games in action. And one of the things I've been tweeting about is that watching other teams, and obviously this isn't just this past week as well, but you could see the difference in the quality of coaching, and coaching, still does matter. And, Matt Eberflus's, tenure has been marred by a lot of inconsistencies. Certainly, there is a problem with winning regularly or consecutively. There's still 0-4 within the own division, dating back to last year. And, we'll get into the Lions game, which they have a huge, huge task going up in Detroit this week a little bit later. But Rishab, there has been some rumblings about Matt Eberflus's future. You probably saw the Adam Johns' article on The Athletic about, his predictions about bringing him back for next year. And he even went on Waddle and Silby yesterday on ESPN 1000 in an interview when they were mainly talking about his trip to North Carolina to see, quarterback prospect Drake May, and the conversation became about Eberflus's future, which Johns once again doubled down on him being back. So I want to know from your perspective, and you and I both agree that at this rate, I don't want Eberflus being back again, and to be paired with a rookie quarterback, either Caleb Williams or Drake May, because it makes absolutely no sense. We've gone through this before already, with John Fox, Mitchell Trubisky. That didn't work, and we brought in Matt Nagy, and Nagy and Trubisky certainly didn't work out. And now they drafted Justin Fields, and then the following year they fired Nagy, and then here we are once again. So, just for the sake of it, what will it take for you to say, okay, yeah, I don't mind seeing Matt Eberflus back in 2024? Give me your best case scenario.
It's gonna take a hell of a lot, man. Like, he's put out so much bad tape, so many bad games.
I know.
Even if he does go on a winning streak, I still kind of like deep down want to see him be fired. But the thing about our remaining schedule is that we have a lot of tough games coming up, right? So we have games against the Detroit Lions, who are, they used to be an easy opponent, but now they're really good opponents. It's going to be really tough to beat the Lions. We got games against the Minnesota Vikings, who have Josh Dobbs and a resurgent team who, after losing Kirk Cousins, has still won football games. And we also got the Cleveland Browns, who I know they lost Deshaun Watson for the season, but their defense is top 5. They got games against the Atlanta Falcons, too, who the Atlanta Falcons, although they're not, anything special this year, they're still a respectable team overall, like a mediocre football team. So we do not have a cupcake schedule coming up. It sounds like, if you guys remember the last time we kept Matt Nagy at the end of 2020, part of the reason why we kept him was because he had a winning streak against really bad opponents like the Jaguars, like some other bad teams that year, and that kind of kept him for the following year. But in this case, it's a really tough schedule coming up for the Bears. So if the Bears do go on any sort of winning streak, like if we split with the Lions, if we beat the Vikings, if we beat, the Browns somehow, if we finish the season maybe with, I don't know, 7, 8 wins, maybe 9 wins somehow, which seems impossible. But if we somehow go on that type of win streak, then obviously I'll be happy with keeping him because he's clearly doing something that's working. And I would actually be very impressed if he can, get this roster to compete against the Lions' amazing roster or the Browns' amazing roster and, the Vikings too. So there definitely still is a path for Eberflus to be the coach next year, but I just don't see how this team is possibly going to go on a win streak at this point in time when we've seen so much bad tape out of this team. But I will say the offensive and defensive lines are playing a lot better. Defense overall is playing a lot better. And if Fields does come back and performs at a high level, then anything is possible. So, we'll see how it goes. But right now, I don't think Eberflus is coming back.
Yeah, certainly the vote of confidence that he gave, shortly after the press conference he gave announcing the Montez Sweat trade, can be seen as something that you don't want to trash a coach on the day you are announcing that trade. So certainly, I think a lot of people, myself included, were trying not to put too much emphasis into it because you wouldn't want to be trashing your own head coach in front of a media on a to announce that massive trade because it just completely diverts all the attention away. So, but people like Adam Johns, even in this day and age where media, mainstream or not, sometimes gets a lot of criticism for, stuff to get clicks or likes. Certainly people like Adam Johns don't do that on purpose either. And, certainly somebody who is well connected and, and does his own thing, with Adam Hogue, Hogue and Johns, certainly. there is a certain validity to it. If it's some flyby guy that is making up some random stuff and has a history of doing that, then I can just be dismissive. But it's unfortunate that the Bears would be making the same mistake over and over again, trying to pin the blame on a quarterback. Certainly, that both neither Ryan Poles nor Matt Eberflus is responsible for drafting. But the problem, certainly, with only 7 games left on the schedule, it's a tall task for Justin Fields to win, all of them, or even maybe a 2 or 3 games at this point. Even if the numbers he puts up, he has to win the games in the fourth quarter. He has to minimize turnovers. He has to lead the team to a comeback victory. Everything is stacked against them. So and this is going to be a hotly debate. And I certainly you're going to be covering on your own website as well. But is it possible or plausible for Fields? You can toss out the win-loss record, because at this point, I think it's going to be a very, very difficult win-loss record anyway, the next 7 games, given their schedule, that you will be convinced that Fields should be brought back in 2024. What do you need to see from him in the next 7 games to say, okay, I want him back, regardless of whether Matt Eberflus is back, Luke Getsy is back, or everybody's gone?
Yeah, I mean, you need to see growth and development as a passer from the pocket. I think that's the only thing Fields really still struggles with sometimes. Like, in terms of avoiding sacks, taking the easy play, being able to be consistent as a quarterback, that's something Fields still does struggle with. So I will say, like, these 5 games he's been out, maybe he's gotten a chance to sit back, watch the tape, and view the game from a different mindset than he previously was, because obviously before he was just starting, and you kind of get lost as weeks go by. Like, you don't have so much time to just like sit down and watch the game and study the game as you do when you're the backup, right? So I think if Fields has improved as a processor, and he doesn't have to be Tom Brady. I'm not saying he has to be Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes or anything like that, but he needs to be at least average as a passer for the Bears to even entertain bringing him back, right? Because you got really talented quarterback prospects in Drake May, Caleb Williams at the top. We already know how dynamic Fields is as a runner, but if he is at least average as a passer, if he can, maybe not win the Bears these remaining games, but at least put together a top 15 offense here the remaining time he has in Chicago, then I think Fields does have a chance of coming back. And I will say, like, I think Ryan Poles does like Justin Fields to some extent, right? Like, otherwise he probably would have drafted a quarterback last year when he had the number 1 pick, or this year, right? Like, we see CJ Stroud doing amazing things, which in hindsight, a lot of Bears fans are saying that's a miss to not select CJ Stroud, which I can definitely hear you out on that. But Bryce Young, obviously, they had a chance to draft him too, chose not to do so. So I think Poles did believe enough in Fields to keep him for this year. And the same thing could happen next year too if he does not view any of the quarterback prospects as being significantly better than Justin Fields, which, I know we're all enamored with the quarterback prospects, but, Caleb Williams has his own fair share of problems as a prospect, right? Like, he holds the ball too long sometimes. He sometimes takes too many sacks. So some of the same problems as, Justin Fields has. Drake May, he's a pretty good prospect, obviously, but he has his flaws too. So I could definitely see a scenario where Fields does come back, but it's going to be pretty tough, and the odds are definitely stacked against him right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that his thumb, unfortunately, it's not fully healed. So there's going to be a bit of a discomfort that he's going to have to tolerate the next 7 games. Certainly, it's a big 7 games that could determine his future, whether it's with the Bears or somebody else in 2024. So, I pray that he can pull through whatever he does. Certainly, we made a lot of big deal about Chris Collinsworth's love fest with Tyson Bagent on a Sunday Night Football, and when the Bears were in Los Angeles to play the Chargers, and kind of looking back, certainly I think we may have kind of jumped to the conclusion, and certainly the comments Collinsworth said about learning from Fields were somewhat insulting and maybe a bit too much. But Justin certainly, in his press conference today, talked about the importance of looking the game from outside, and hopefully that you and I will agree that whatever he saw out there, with the way Beijing commanded in the pocket, the footwork, and getting rid of the ball quickly. I think Justin, with his talent and work ethic, certainly can do a lot better, and then do more with than what Tyson Bagent was doing. So I hope that Justin will be ready, and that the coaching staff, with 7 games to go, certainly they have to save their own asses, for the lack of better terms, and that's just not on Matt Eberflus, but it's also including Luke Getsy, the much maligned offensive coordinator, and Getsy has to tailor his offense to the skills of Justin Fields in order to be very, very successful. Because if Getsy continues to call plays like if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, and act like it, and to call plays or schemes that doesn't really tailor to neither Bagent or Fields, for that matter, I've been questioning Getsy, and you've had a lot of questions about him as well. If he has no trust in neither of the quarterbacks, then why the hell is he even an offensive coordinator at this point? So, it's a big game for Luke Getsy as well. Going up against Detroit Lions this week. The Lions are on a roll. Certainly, for Matt Eberflus as well, because his defense versus Ben Johnson, the hot offensive coordinator, who is definitely going to be a top head coaching candidate this offseason. I think when we look at the Lions game this week, I think certainly that is the first and foremost. Matt Eberflus's defense versus Ben Johnson's offense. Who does the better job? And certainly, if as we're so accustomed to seeing the Bears looking so sloppy off a bye, just like we saw, the game following the Washington game on a Thursday night, where there was a high of beating Washington 40-20. The Bears crapped themselves the following 10-day off against the Vikings, where they looked nothing like they were ready to play. And of course, that's the game Justin Fields suffered a significant injury that sidelined him this long and derailed the season. So that has to be at the top of the the keys to the game, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And if you're asking me who I think does a better job, obviously I have to go with Ben Johnson. He's a proven offensive mind at this point. He's enabled the Lions to have a top 5 offense right now in the NFL, I think, are the stats. So, yeah, it's going to be a really tough game. I mean, we're going up against a stacked offense. It's not the Detroit Lions that we're used to. They got a really dominant offensive line, really, genius play caller. Really good weapons too right now, right? Like they got Jamison Williams back from suspension, and he's not really as involved in the offense, I'd say, but like Amon-Ra St. Brown is there. They got other guys too. They got Sam Laporta, the tight end from Iowa, who's having a fantastic start to his NFL career. So they have a lot of pieces on offense. And if Matt Eberflus can find a way to stop these guys, or at least limit them to scoring, I'll say below 24 points, I would be extremely, extremely impressed. And that'll probably be, a coaching success from Matt Eberflus. And I'm not going to count on Eberflus entirely, because even though I think he's a bad coach, even though like I'm down on him, you're down on him as well. With the Colts, like he had top 10 defenses with them basically every single year of his NFL career there. So the guy does know defense to some extent. I don't think he's a top defensive mind, but I think he can, if he's coaching at his best, like maybe he can limit this Lions offense to scoring less than 24, which if that's the case, maybe the Bears will have a chance to be competitive in this game. I'm not predicting that to happen, but the chance that that happens is still, out there. And especially with Montez Sweat playing pretty well with, the Bears secondary fully back. We got Jalen Johnson fully healthy. He's playing really well. We got Kyler Gordon back. Terrell Smith, also a rookie cornerback that we drafted in the later rounds. He's also back. He probably is not going to be starting, but I guess the Commanders actually played better than Tyreek Stevenson, the other rookie that we drafted in round 2. So
Mhm.
um, everybody's getting healthy on defense. The defense is playing better. So there definitely could be a world in which the Bears do keep this somewhat competitive. And I do personally think this could be a trap game for the Lions to some extent, right? Like, I don't think their fan base, their players, obviously, they're probably not taking us as seriously because we have a bad record right now. They blew the shit out of us last year, 41 to
Yeah.
10 in that second game. So maybe this could be a trap game for the Lions. I think, obviously I'm not going to be predicting a Bears win, but that's definitely the biggest key, our defense stopping their offense.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge challenge. The Bears' defense has to definitely, they can stop the run. That's good. They're going to be facing, heavy dose of Jameer Gibbs, who's probably, really, really starting to emerge. Not as a full running back, but more like a guy who gets 5-10 carries and certainly guy who will catch maybe 5-6 passes out of the backfield, and that's been a massive problem for the Bears. Third down defense and catching, tackling or defending players out of the backfield. They struggle against Alvin Kamara. Certainly, Jameer Gibbs, certainly younger and has more fresh legs. It's going to be very, very interesting to see if Bears can stay disciplined and tackle Gibbs. And then you also have to, consider David Montgomery, former Bear. He had a 75-yard touchdown last week against the Los Angeles Chargers, on the first carry out of the, one of the drives after the Chargers had scored a touchdown. So, Montgomery certainly is going to be licking his chops against the Bears. Now he's in a better situation, and certainly I'm going to touch on this a little bit later. He's going to be asked about the Bears and where he is now versus a year ago, and it's going to be very interesting to see what Monty has to say, because I don't know if you caught the Roquan Smith interview with Albert Breer about
Yeah.
how he is in a better position and stuff like that, right? So yeah.
It hurts to hear as a Bears fan. I mean, obviously, he can't say anything. Like, he's accurate in saying, the Bears don't give any player best chance of winning. But it still hurts to hear as a Bears fan that, your own players, they think so lowly of your franchise that they're saying stuff like that when they're going to different teams.
No, because I totally get it, and it's totally understandable for Roquan to maybe run his mouth. Certainly, he feels that you know it is in a great position, and that's understandable because I wrote up my article on the beargoggleson.com about Roquan, kind of trolling, the Chicago Bears in his interview. And, this is a little bit what I'm worried about, former players like him and Monty, thriving elsewhere, which another further stain to the Chicago Bears organization, because they have not been able to not only maintain their own players, but also can't cultivate a winning culture. And again, going back to what we were discussing earlier, bringing back Matt Eberflus is not going to change much about the perception of this organization, which isn't great. So, I'm worried about the Bears, and certainly the players nowadays talk to each other certainly via social media, and they have wider platforms, Twitch, podcasts, more so than the traditional radio and television gigs. And they're going to be talking about, about their time in the NFL, and talk about the Chicago Bears and the other teams, et cetera, et cetera. But should we worry about the what Roquan and perhaps Montgomerys of the world are saying about the Bears, or is this basically justifiable because of where this organization is right now, in your opinion?
No, it's definitely worrisome. I mean, it's never a good look where your two of your best players in the last 5 years are going elsewhere and, pouting off about how the Bears never gave them a chance to win. And especially Montgomery going to the Detroit Lions. Like, the Lions are not known to be a winning franchise, and he's still enjoying his time there more than he did with the Chicago Bears. So it definitely does hurt to hear these words as a true fan of this team. But on the flip side, like once you start winning, none of this actually matters. I even like DJ Moore right now talked about how even though we're losing right now, like he's still really happy being a Chicago Bear. He's still having a fun time here. Still think it's a good place to play football. So obviously former players are going to be disgruntled to some extent because they're mad that we got rid of them. We didn't re-sign them, whatever. But
Or they didn't
on
get
the
paid enough, too. Yeah.
or didn't get paid enough, right? So there's two sides of the coin there. They're kind of salty, but also they are accurate in saying the Bears didn't really put them in a good position to win. So I understand both sides of the argument, but I think going forward, the only way to fix this is by winning football games, right? If the Bears turn the season around, they get
Right.
to 6, 7, 8 wins somehow, like the narrative is going to be a lot different than it is right now.
Certainly, that narrative has to start changing this week against the hot Detroit Lions. And speaking of the Lions, if you remember last year, the Lions were in a very much a similar position as the Bears were, and the Bears had a 2-touchdown lead against the Lions, and they happened to blow that lead. And that was also the game in which Cairo Santos missed a extra point, and that's why the Bears ended up losing that game 31-30. And from that point on, the Bears just went on a tailspin. And then the Lions started to make their slow ascent, that they were able to finish strong last year. They're actually 14-4 since that ball game against the Bears last year in Soldier Field. So, the Bears are probably hoping to duplicate that miracle that the Lions are in, that they at the expense of them beating us in Chicago last year. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see, where the Bears go. This game is going to tell us a lot about maybe the last final 7 games of the season and how the Bears are going to finish. Don't you think?
100%, yeah. And like you mentioned, that's when the Lions season started turning around after they came back against us. So there's totally a chance for us to kind of flip the script and do the same against them, upset them when they're a good team, and start a run of our own. I will say the Lions team though had more talent on it. Like they had multiple first round picks. Right now Ryan Poles he's only made 1 first round pick, where I think the Lions at that time last year they had 3 first round picks and maybe 4 first round picks. I know they have multiple first round picks, obviously from the Jared Goff trade. So it's not a totally apples to apples scenario. Like the Lions had a head start on the rebuild compared to us, but anything is possible, right? Look, if you win this game, who's to say we can't go on a winning streak and finish the season, 8-9, 9-8, whatever? Because if you beat the Lions, who are a really good team this year, the Lions have beaten really good teams like the Chiefs and all. So beating the Lions would be a very impressive thing, and I would be very happy to see that. And it'll remain to be seen if that's even possible for this team right now. But like I mentioned earlier, with the Lions playing better, the Lions offensive defensive lines playing better, Justin Fields being back, our team getting fully healthy, maybe there is a chance that this could be an upset and a trap game for the Lions.
Let's hope so. I have to say, Coach Campbell of the Lions certainly has been a revelation, and I have to say that Dan Campbell, has been a revelation. We all made fun of him when he was hired about the biting the kneecap and his crazy coffee addiction stories. I lived in Detroit, outside of Detroit, when he was hired, and it was just like a butt of a joke all year long. And again, that the Lions versus the Bears game last year, where the Bears blew a 2-touchdown lead, certainly flipped this narrative between the Lions and the Bears. And now all of a sudden, Dan Campbell looks like a hell of a coach. He gets very, very emotional and everything, but obviously that's his character. I would rather watch Dan Campbell than word salad generator like Matt Eberflus. 10 times more so than watching Eberflus, speak. So, it's going to be a very interesting. Dan Campbell is a coach that is has the pulse of his entire team. certainly, Dan is somebody that really emotional, but him being a former player and an assistant coach and an interim coach, he gets it. He understands what makes players tick, and certainly the Lions all of a sudden now looks like they're going to be forced to be reckoned with, not just in the NFC North. Will be very interesting. Again, we mentioned OC Ben Johnson. He only took over last year when they fired former Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn. Again, Eberflus D versus OC Ben Johnson. The chess match is going to be great. Hopefully, the Bears defense will have their way against Ben Johnson's offense. So it's going to be a very interesting game there. But so obviously, we make a lot of talks about Fields needing to step up in the final 7 games. I'm going to try and run by a couple of players, and maybe you could give me a couple of players who you think needs to also step in the final 7 games. One guy has to be certainly Braxton Jones. He has to cement himself as the left tackle of the future. Obviously, the neck injury that he suffered earlier this year was a scary one. I'm going to have to think, 2 other guys, Tyreek Stevenson. Has had a very rough rookie year. Jaquan Brisker, he just came back from a concussion and was, you were there at the game. He did not look good early on before he finally settled in, but his second year has not been a very good one. Who else needs to have a, big 7 games to solidify themselves, in your opinion?
Yeah, I'll say Tremaine Edmonds definitely. I'm not sure if he's going to be coming back from his injury anytime soon. He's had a knee injury, I want to say, and he's been out for the last couple of games. And in his absence, Jack Sanborn has actually somewhat looked better than him in the games that he's played, and that's kind of crazy because Tremaine Edmonds, we're paying him $18 million per year. Jack Sanborn's not making any money at all. So I think to justify paying Tremaine Edmonds that much money, he has to have more production in this scheme. Like, he has to have some more turnovers. He has to make more tackles. He has to be seen on the screen a lot more than he currently is, because right now, like, some games you cannot even tell Tremaine Edmonds is even in the lineup. So for being the Bears' highest paid defensive player besides Montez Sweat, he definitely has to step up right now. Unique Ngakoue, I'd say, also has to step up as well. He's only on a 1-year contract, so even if he doesn't step up, if he has to be let go after this year, that's totally fine. But if he does want to be on for 2024 and beyond, he needs to step up and have multiple sacks. Like, he needs to get to 10 sacks, honestly, to even think about keeping him on the roster, because, he's not done anything at all throughout this point of the season. So those are 2 key names. And besides that, maybe I'd say Nate Davis. Nate Davis does look pretty good in certain stretches, but he's also struggled with injuries. He had the death in the family early on the season, which, made things difficult at the beginning of the season. But I want to see him bounce back strong from the injuries. He had an ankle injury recently, which he's fully back from now. So I want to see Nate Davis, start the rest of the season, perform well, and then the Bears could have a really solid offensive line, a really solid starting 5 if we do get a better center.
Yeah, they made the announcement this week. Nate Davis is back. Unfortunately, Tevin Jenkins has to switch back to left guard position, correct?
Yes, yeah. I think Tevin is going back to left guard, and Nate Davis is going to be a right guard, yeah.
Certainly, the center remains a bit of a position of a weakness, which I'm still pissed that Ryan Poles didn't really do enough to address. But now at least we have a very strong offensive line. Thankfully, Cody Whitehair is not in the lineup, and certainly he has been one of the biggest weak links of this organization this year. He can't snap the ball, and he was shifted to the left guard, and he still couldn't offer much and the blocking there. So hopefully, Lucas Patrick is able to, snap the ball, competently. At least, if Patrick does go out, I hope that it's not going to be Cody Whitehair being in the, as a backup center. I hope that it's going to be Dan Feeney, who, Poles spent, only 6th round pick to get him. So hopefully it will be Dan Feeney if Lucas Patrick is either hurt or is having a Cody Whitehair like issue when it comes to snapping. So this is going to be a encouraging news for Justin Fields. In terms of protection, now that they have a full complementary offensive line that should have been what it needs to be from the very first day. Unfortunately, you mentioned Nate Davis's family problems and and all kinds of stuff that just kind of derailed the entire offensive line from having a consistent lineup. So this is going to be a very interesting game. And give me your prediction on the Lions versus the Bears, and what do you expect to see and how it turns out.
Yeah, I haven't made my video yet, but I'll probably end up predicting maybe 30-20 Lions. Unfortunately, I really do want to pick a Bears win. I think a Bears win is possible, but just being realistic, until I see this Bears team actually beat a good team, I can't pick them to actually beat a good team. The Lions are a really good team right now. I think maybe Fields has a decent game, but our defense probably is going to be allowing a lot of points. I think Jared Goff could have his way against our defense with how good their offensive line is. But I would love to be proven wrong. But I have to go with winning at this point in time. But we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I think maybe first 3 quarters, Bears will certainly be able to hang in with the Lions, but I think playing on the road and then the noise becomes a bit of a factor. I think the Bears start to kind of crumble late in the game. I'm going to say 34-24 or 34-27. I think that's going to be the final score there. Certainly, I think more so. I'm definitely hoping to see Justin Fields make a quick decision, getting rid of the ball quickly, stay in the pocket and just be able to hang in there a little bit longer. Just don't throw any interceptions, and then just be able to, take off and run every once in a while, whether it's by design or just basically don't take any sacks and just, take it off, just get rid of it, get rid of the ball, just stay alive for the next play. And, the things that we saw early on this year that has, plagued plagued Fields. I hope I don't have to see that. And, I want to be able to see some encouraging performance and, more so than the game, it's, the results itself. So that's something that I think you and I will have to keep a close eye on, this Sunday's game against the Lions. And certainly something that, in our next show, we'll go further into detail about how Justin Fields looked against the mighty Lions, which is something that I don't think you and I never thought that we'd be saying, but yet here we are. So, Rishab, I want to thank you for joining me on our live stream once again. As you can see, scrolling at the bottom, you could go subscribe to YouTube and subscribe to his channel. DaWindyCity Productions. You could also follow him on Twitter at DWCPRODZ. I can be followed on Twitter at Asian Sports Fan 1. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, I also am an online contributor with the beargoggleson.com as well. Rishab, thanks for your time tonight. And let's get together again next week to look back on the Bears versus the Lions. And hopefully we get to see a very good performance out of Justin Fields. Have a wonderful night.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Take care.